Good Friday morning, the Acts of the Apostles. This is the story of how Paul gets to Rome. And again, it's the instrument of the state. I'll read it to you. King Agrippa and Bernice arrived in Caesarea on a visit to Festus, not the Festus in South County, okay? You have to understand that. That's for my St. Louis friends here. Since they spent several days there, Festus referred Paul's case to the king, saying, "There is a man here left in custody by Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him and demanded his condemnation. I answered them that it was not Roman practice to hand over an accused person before he faced his accusers, and had the opportunity to defend himself against their charge." That's Roman law. Isn't that neat? You thought we invented it? This is 2,000 years ago, you see. The Romans were the best lawyers in the world. They still are. They probably still are. See? So when they came together here, I made no delay. The next day I took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought in. His accusers stood around him, but did not charge him with any of the crimes I suspected. Instead, they had some issues with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who had died, but who Paul claimed to be alive. Since I was at a loss how to investigate this controversy, I asked if he were willing to go to Jerusalem and there stand trial on these charges. Now here's Roman law. And remember, Paul is a Roman citizen. And when Paul appealed that he be held in custody for the emperor's decision, I ordered him held until I could send him to Caesar. See, every Roman had a right, think of the Supreme Court, a right to be judged by Caesar. So as he's a Roman citizen by birth, Paul is he's Jewish, obviously, but he's a Roman citizen by birth. Hence, he could appeal to Roman law, and he appeals to he appeals to the emperor, which means they have to, by law, bring him to Rome in which his case is presented before the emperor. So Paul gets to Rome. How and why? Because he appealed through Roman law to be tried and judged by the emperor, not by the Sadducees and Pharisees. And in coming to Rome, he brings Christianity with him and the church. And with that, the growth of the church, his own blood is martyred, so is Peter and all the rest. You see, the church is born in and within the Roman law. It's facilitated and globalized through Roman law. The gospel is universal, but its appropriateness and its application is fostered, as it were. It was fostered by Roman law. See, if it wasn't for Rome, the church couldn't have expanded itself out of Jerusalem. It was the instrument of the state that made it possible for its globalization. And in 3 centuries later, under Constantine, it becomes the religion of Rome. And it spread all over the world, even as far as India. Wherever the Roman Empire was, that's where the faith was, you see. It became a global religion, see. It's neat, isn't it? I'm fascinated by these kinds of things, how the workings of history often are the instruments of grace. You know, they're the instruments of grace. And we're right there now. We're in the second greatest period since that period that Paul represents. Was it 9 o'clock? Yeah. No, it's 8 o'clock. What am I talking about? See? It's interesting. It's an interesting... I think we live in the second... I told you that now. So many other times you're bored hearing, but we're in the second greatest age of the church. Because now we're preached all over the world. The church is being preached all over the world. And the instrument of the preaching, in many ways, is our universal mode of communications. You can't silence the voice of the church. The mode of communication is universal, and her presence is throughout the world. And she brings, in a sense, the civilizing genius of Christian humanism. Right? The seed is planted. And as I've mentioned to you 1,000,000 times, or is it 1,000,002? I think Asia's going to be the great explosion. I already know it because the blood of the martyrs are there, my fellow Passionists and others. Asia is going to embrace Christianity, and it's already doing it. As it embraces it, it will bring a unique voice, the Asian voice, to the symphony, to the choir. I won't see it, I don't think, although I see elements of it now. But for instance, I think the future of my order is Asia. It's where we're getting vocations. Not a lot, but you don't need a lot. You need a start. Asia, China, Southeast Asia. Yeah. That's what I think. I don't think I'm wrong on that score either. If you study the life of the church, just when you think she's dead, she's alive. That's just simply the truth. That's the finger of God, in a sense, profoundly in the finger of God. He writes the story. See? If you want to see a proof of that, Good Friday should have been the end of any pretense to a religion emerging out of Christ. He's dead on the cross. He's all washed up. And then you get Easter Sunday. So the great story of the death and resurrection of Christ is the foundation of our belief, but it's also the foundation of our hope. That even when we seem to be dead, we're alive. And I see that. I think one of the challenges is not going to be Asia. I think Asia is going to embrace the church and Christianity with a vengeance. I already see it. I see the future of my order being Chinese and Asian, Southeast Asian, Korean, etc., Vietnamese, etc. That's where we're growing. But we're not alone. But I also see in America, I don't know this, but I think there'll be a reinvigoration of the faith in America. It's the generations that were cultural and passionate believers. That's our generation. Mass every day or Mass on Sundays, etc. Culturally, I think that's not true of our children and our grandchildren, with exception. When a kid believes today, a kid believes with fervor, because the culture around them doesn't. And it doesn't even pretend to it anymore. I see it in class. We want to see the commitment of our kids that come to SLU for the faith. You go to a Sunday Mass, I'm rarely there, but when they're packed. But also I see it in the classroom. I would say that for every kid that's a non-believer or skeptical believer, you have 15 or 20 that are committed to the faith. They're not believers, they're committed to it. See, now, culturally, you can choose. In fact, you have to choose. You have to choose today. Because the culture has become agnostic at best. And so to be an atheist or a Christian requires a choice. You have to choose. And some of my friends have become atheists. Some of my very, very close friends, people I deeply love, just don't believe. It's not wishy-washy, maybe a generation older. They went to church once in a while, scratch them, and they're really Christians. These kids are not that way. They're saying, I believe or I don't believe. They're not wishy-washy. They're better. I think in terms of human conscience, it's better to be an atheist than to be just conventional. That is, you're going along, you don't know if you believe it or you don't. Because at least you made a choice. And also on the other side, when you make a choice to believe, there is passion in that belief and commitment. You put your money where your mouth is. I think we live in it's the Roman Empire. If you choose to believe, you might end up with the lions in the Colosseum, the martyrs. See? If you choose to believe, you see? I think we're where the Romans were 400 AD, 500, whatever it is. See? We're choosing within the culture. And the culture is both inimical to the faith by being radically secularized, but also opportunistic. It's open. You can be a believer. See? And you not only can be a believer, you're called to be one. And you're supported by other believers. I see that at SLU. The masses are full. These kids believe, you see? We don't live in a bad time. We live in a dangerously exciting time. But it's more exciting than dangerous, my view. Every day when I go into class, I look into the face of tomorrow. And when I see that, I see beauty, grace, tomorrow's promise. I don't see a bad world out there. I see an exciting world of grace and life. I really do. I love being with those kids. I see tomorrow in their eyes. And with that, I have hope that they will be the lead. I tell them in class, you have to lead the culture. Don't follow. Lead it. They will.